Welcome back to the Triathlon Training Explained show powered by Training Peaks. This week, our focus is moving to run pacing. Now, there are so many different things that can affect your running time, and two of the major ones being the distance of your running race and also what you've done before it. Well, I'm delighted to say that for today's video, I found a new runner, GCN presenter James.
Yeah, I'm super excited to get more into running. And well, I haven't done running a lot, so I've got a lot to learn before my first triathlon. Now, I have done a 5 kilometers, but well, that wasn't after a swim and then a bike. So I'm aware I've got to time it a little bit differently. And well, the same goes for endurance and longer runs.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just expect to run at your 5K pace if you're doing a marathon. And the same goes for the fact you're probably not going to be able to do a 10K PB at the end of a 1500 swim and a 40K bike like you're in an Olympic distance triathlon.
So I guess the real question we're asking is, how do I time and pace for my next event?
Well, do you know what, James? You're in luck, because in today's video, we're going to be looking at the different methods and calculations in which to work out your running pace for different distances for your next race.
So unless you're very new to running, you're probably going to have a race or an event that you can use as a benchmark. I haven't run in a while, but I have done a 5K, so I'm going to use my 5K I did a while ago as my starting point.
Yeah, and you obviously have to realise that your pace and your fitness is going to change throughout your career, but also throughout your season. And there are ways to measure your current threshold pace, but I think that's a video for another day. So for today's sake, like you said, James, we're going to use your 5K time. And then we can work out predicted times. So I think a good example would be to look at your predicted marathon, because if you do want to do an Ironman next year, that you've mentioned, you'll need to know that pace. And you'll also then need to know how that pace will change when you add in quite a lot of swimming and cycling before it.
Yes, because I guess if I do a 5K, I can't just double that for a 10K, and I can't do a 10K and double that to do a 20K.
You could hope.
Wouldn't really work.
No, sadly not. Yeah, you're right. I think a calculation is needed, and there are various online calculators that will give you options for the different distances that you run. And they were basically originally devised by a guy called Pete Rigel, who was a research engineer, but also a marathon runner. And they've widely been used for the last 20 years.
Yes, so bear with us because, well, it's a long one. It's T2 equals T1 times D2 divided by D1 to the power of 1.06, where T1 is the given time, D1 is the given distance, D2 is the distance to predict a time for, and T2 is the calculated time for D2. So I hope you've made it through that, well, rather complicated formula. But if you still are with us, I've recorded my 5 kilometers, and in theory, I could use that time to calculate any distances.
Yeah, I think it's time we put it to the test. And I know you'd like to find out what your marathon time could potentially be. So James, this is a time of truth. You've got to tell us, what is your 5K time?
Oh, well, can we have a drum roll, please?
Okay, drum roll.
23 minutes and 12 seconds.
Okay, right, well, bear with me. I need to put this into the laptop because I can't do this calculation on my own. So if T2 is 23 minutes and 12, then we times that by 42.2K divided by 5K for the distances to the power of 1.06. And once you've worked out the seconds into the minutes and then into the hours, James, your time predicted for a marathon is 3 hours, 42 minutes, 32 seconds.
Wow, that sounds pretty good.
It does.
I think I'll take that right now.
Well, I mean, that is a very complicated calculation, and you can just go and use an online tool. And we're actually going to have a look at all of our times. We're going to input mine and yours and see if we can work out what potentially you could run for a 10K, a half marathon, and a marathon. And let's have a look. So from an 18:42, that would give me a sub 39 minute 10K, and actually gives me a PB on a half marathon and a sub 3 hour marathon. And for James, he's got a 48 minute 10K in theory and a 1:46 half marathon and a 3:42 marathon, like we already mentioned. Well, do you know what? I'm personally quite happy with those times because it predicts that I could do a PB over a 10K, a half marathon, and even get a sub 3 hour marathon. But I think for the moment that might be a bit of a dream.
Yeah, but the real question is, what does a 48 minutes 10K feel like?
Well, I think we need to work out what pace you have to run at, and then you can go and find out for yourself. So let's put this into another calculator. So if you have a 48:22, like you said that we worked out, for 10K, that means you're going to need to hold 4 minutes 50 per kilometre to be able to run that time. So you've got to watch.
I reckon I can do that.
Go and find out.
Let's test. Here we go.
James?
Whew. Get a breath back. Whew. Yeah, to be honest, I didn't feel too bad at that pace.
You sure?
Yeah, but I only did 5K.
Oh.
I think I need a bit more training to move it up to the 10K, to be quite honest.
Well, I mean, fair enough. It is just a calculation and a prediction. And if, say, for example, you train specifically for 5K, then it's not going to be as accurate a prediction to give you your marathon pace. And some of us are more physiologically suited to shorter distances or longer distances. So that's another factor to bear in mind. And I know as a cyclist, you're quite strong and powerful. So maybe this calculator, your times are more likely to drop off a little bit more for the longer distances.
Drop off? Well, that seems a little disappointing. Are there any other ways I can predict my race time?
Well, I mean, there are. It depends on what you use to measure your running. So there's obviously various different apps. For example, Training Peaks will use your recent running data and give you a chart that shows current running pace for the varying distances. And mine here shows my pace drop off from 800 meters up to 10K. Polar, for example, uses Running Index on their Polar Flow app, and that takes into account your current running efficiency to give you a predicted time for the different distances. And I seem to be hovering around the 61, 62 mark, which I can then compare on this other chart, and that gives me a predicted marathon time of, say, 3 hours 13 to 3 hours 20, and it takes into account all of my training runs as well as races, but doesn't give me quite such preferable figures as the calculator did, but maybe it's more realistic.
So now you know how to predict your run time, but what happens if you put it into a triathlon having swam and biked?
Well, that's, a good point. Your running PB isn't really that significant. It's about how fast you can run at the end of a triathlon. And some athletes are more efficient and able to do that better than others. And to be a good triathlete, you actually want your run times to be as similar to your run PB as it is to your triathlon PB. And there's various theories on how you can calculate this. Some people say that if you can be within 5 to 6% of your running PB in a triathlon, then that's a really good target to have. And then, for example, for a 5K, one of the ballpark figures is between 1 and 2 minutes, but that does vary depending on what pace you're running at.
So how much slower do you think you will be in a triathlon compared to pure running?
Well, I mean, it does vary from the races I've done as to how hard the bike is, what the conditions are like, and how my legs are feeling going into that. But on the whole, I found that over a 5K, I'm sort of about a minute slower. Over a 10K, it's sort of 2-ish minutes, and then a half marathon, when I've done the half marathons and a half Ironman, that my time tends to be about 4 or 5 minutes difference, but I've not run a standalone marathon, so I can't really compare that.
So in theory, draft legal athletes will see less of a difference in their triathlon run PBs than, say, non-draft legal athletes.
Yeah, and going back to talking about different courses and how to predict your time, there's actually now an online tool called the Pacing Project that helps you do this. And earlier I spoke to the guy who designed it.
Hello, my name is Ryan Cooper. I'm the creator of Best Bike Split and now Chief Scientist at Training Peaks.
Well, this is very similar to the Best Bike Split, which allows you to work out your specific pace for a certain course. And then from that, you can work out your exact pacing strategy for the run.
So Pacing Project is similar to Best Bike Split in that it takes the course and breaks it into sections. But unlike Best Bike Split, where it gives you a power target, Pacing Project gives you a pace target for each section of the course.
That sounds too good to be true. In theory, then, I could actually work out the exact pace that I need to run, even if it's not on a pan-flat course or in perfect conditions.
In Pacing Project, there are 3 ways to get an optimal pacing strategy for your race. You can input a goal time. You can input a graded pace, which is kind of your flat line pace over an Ironman distance or over a half Ironman distance. Or you can use personal bests from shorter distances to calculate what your best would be or your pacing strategy for a different distance.
So I could put in the actual time that I want to do at this race, and then it would give me a pacing strategy from that. Or I could put in a pace that I know I've run at from a previous race and go from there.
So the result of the model is that it gives you a specific pace for every section of the course or per kilometer or mile. And every course is different, so we have different courses in the system. Ironman Wales, we'll have Ironman Kona up shortly. And so it gives you an idea of how these paces will change per different courses and conditions.
Well, that's actually really interesting and helpful. I can't actually wait to put this into practice.
Yeah, I mean, I find it motivating as well to have those times, and it can be really useful for your training, especially if you've got hills on a course and you can practice running at race pace. But do remember, it is just a guide, it's a calculator, and it can't take into consideration all the other factors.
Yes, but I do find it really motivating to use that time for the longer rides, and it's also really useful in constructing a training plan and race strategy.
Yeah, well, if you've enjoyed this and you want to get all of our videos from GTN, then hit the globe to subscribe. And if you want to see a video that Mark did for Triathlon Training Explained on Brick Workouts 101, that's just here.
And if you want to see a video on your bike timing, click down here.